Well, you all know Nicky. He doesn't need any introduction. You talk to him, you've seen him like walking around, and you get his you're going to see him. But as for a couple of reminders to just refresh your memories. The first one, yeah, Nicky wearing a speedo, on top of a horse. But that's not the crazy thing. The crazy thing is that he posts it on Facebook. You see, and I'm like, seriously, Nicky? Or his profile picture. Like, why, Nicky? And again, seriously, Nicky? And what happens is that you hang out with Nicky and you start hearing this phrase over and over and over from his friends. Especially when you look into your inbox and you see a blast of it. It's like, oh my god, here it comes again. And that gave him a pretty good reputation as the king of blast. I don't think that there's any other class that has gotten more like funny blast as ours. And this all comes with good intentions and with, like, just fun to the class. But it has his explanation, is that Nicky has no filter in his brain. Seriously, every time there's a thought, it comes and it's just actions, jokes, and things that make everyone happy here. And that's something great about Nicky. But you all know that Nicky. What you don't know is that he's also a very, very special person. And I have 4 things to tell you about that. The first one is Nicky's generosity. One of the things that he enjoys the most, beyond blasting and sending these emails, is giving. And giving comes in the form of experiences, knowledge, time, his fancy car sometimes, and many other things. And you've had a sample of those things. The barbecues that he planned, the parties that he plans, the entrepreneurship conference. But it goes very, very, very far beyond these things. As an example, Nicky's father got a house in Uruguay to spend with his family that lives there. His father lives in Germany. So every December, the idea is that they go and they spend time with the family. And this was the first time that they were going to use this house. But for Nicky, family, and this generosity and this craziness, is everyone. So he invited not 1 or 2 people, he invited 10 GSBers to spend time in the first time that they were going to use this house. And we hang out with Nicky's uncles, Nicky's aunties, the cousins, everyone. And we were in guests. We were at home. And that was just like priceless to me. The second one is Nicky's ability to listen to people, understand what's happening, and then come up with the best advice. And over these 1.5 years, I've been involved in very tough situations in which this ability of Nicky has just made a huge difference in me. Fourth, his humility. This guy is fucking national champion of golf in Germany, and you'll never see him talk about that when he's getting to know a person. And when you bring it up, he's like, hey, shh. And this comes to the last point, is that Nicky is just Nicky, a very, very, very genuine guy, a guy that I really, really love, that has made this time amazing for me, amazing for many, many other people that I know, and I hope that you get to know him better. So please join me in welcoming him.
He always says that, Nicky, you don't have a filter. But what I also get is, Nicky, you're such a crazy, crazy German. And I imagine this with a Georgian accent. Or this time a female classmate, she says, Nicky, I don't know what's going on in your head, but I do find you hilarious. So I get this feedback every now and then, and I do reflect more about it than my friends would think. But before I share my thoughts about this, let me tell you a little bit about me growing up. So here I sit on my bicycle. I'm 3 years old, and I'm riding my really cool bicycle with my older brother Andrew, who was 5 years old, and his friends. And pretty quickly I realized his bike is so much cooler than mine, because mine has training wheels. And then I start looking at my training wheels and try to understand why I actually need these training wheels. And then quickly I realized, well, so I wouldn't tip over and fall off. And then I ride down the street and try to balance as much as possible and realize that I actually don't need these training wheels. They don't touch the ground. So I go home and I go to the kitchen where my mom was cooking. And I walk up to her, like always, I'm like, Mom, I would always pull her sweater, like, Mom, you need to take off my training wheels. And she looks at me and said, that doesn't make any sense. You will fall off and hurt yourself. I'm like, no, I tried it and it works, and I've seen my brother doing it. And she said, yeah, well, your brother is 2 years older than you. It doesn't make any sense. I promise you'll fall over and hurt yourself. I said, no, Mom, but I've tried it out, and if I go straight, she said, no, Nicky, I'm not going to discuss it with you. So I'm upset, I leave the kitchen, but instead of going out, I go to my dad's closet, where I knew his toolbox was. So I grab random tools, which I thought make sense, I go out and I start taking off the screws, take off one training wheel, take off the other training wheel, put back the screws, luckily firm enough. And then I'm on this bike, I'm like, well, this is scary, no training wheels. And I push it forward and tried, but it didn't work. So I'm like, oh, let's try this again. So I pushed it and I would tip over. I'm like, maybe if I go quicker. So I go quicker, then I fall off. But then I turn around, I'm like, no, let's try this again. But this time really quickly. So I push, and then I jump on the bike and it works. And I'm driving this bike until I hit the fence. Until I hit right in front of the window where my mom was cooking, and she freaks out. So she runs out of the kitchen, but when she gets out, super worried about me, I was on my bike again, riding the bike. And she said, well, this actually worked out. So as a kid, I'm telling you this story because as a kid, I always wanted to try out everything. I had no worries to be ashamed or to embarrass myself. I had this super huge comfort zone where I would always try out no matter what. And I did really silly things. That other day, I think I was 6 years old. And my dad would tell us would take my brothers, Thomas and Andrew, to a sports outfitter with me. It was summer, and he said we would buy ski boots and ski equipment to prepare for the ski season. It's been in the summer, everything's cheap, so why don't we take advantage? So we go, and I fell in love with this really awesome ski boot. It had all these flashy orange and green colors, and it was really fancy how you could adjust them. And I told my dad I fell in love with this ski boot, I need the ski boot. And he said, well, this actually makes sense, this is a good ski boot. So I go home, and the next morning, I get up in the morning, super excited, and I go down, have breakfast, get dressed, have a shower. And at 7:30, I go down, I was about to leave the house to go to school, and I'm putting on these ski boots. And my mom looks at me and said, what are you doing? I told her, well, these ski boots, they're so awesome, I need to show my friends. And she said, yeah, but it's summer, it's 80 degrees outside. And I'm like, no, but they're so cool, I need to wear them, what's the problem? And she says, well, it doesn't make any sense. You walk to school, you'll never get there, and you'll be so upset. And she wants to take them off of my feet. But I tell her, no, I really want to try this is working. And then we discuss, and she gets upset, saying, whatever you do, don't complain. So I insist, I take on the ski boots, and I go to school. I hate myself. And that trip that typically, the 2 miles that took me 25 minutes, took me 1.5 hours. And when I get to school, the teachers look at me and say, your mom called, I hate myself, it's so hot, I'm pouring. And I hate myself even more so because I didn't listen to my mom. And I hate myself because 5 hours later, I would have to walk home. So I walk home, my mom opens the door, she cracks up laughing. I'm like, take off the shoes, put them aside, and tell my mom, tomorrow, I'll take the other shoes. So no matter what, I needed to try out everything. And it was always like, I wanted to try how far I can go, how far I can stretch it. And I did really, really silly things. So I was playing soccer when I was growing up, until when I was 10, and then we went skiing in the winter. And we had a really cool instructor, and we were all with our friends. And it was really bad weather that one day. It was a snowstorm, and we couldn't see anything. The instructor was super worried about us. And he said, so, there's one thing you have to do. You go down the slope very slowly, and then you turn left, and when you look to the left, I passed the entire group and drove away. And he yelled, said, stop Nicky, and I could hear him, but I wouldn't listen, so I went on. And then he said, okay, group, come quickly, we need to follow Nicky. And halfway I stop and look back, I see they're coming, so everything is good, they hadn't lost me. And I keep going, And then I see this lift in front of me, where I knew that we were trying to go. And I turn around, and I see how the group was slowing down and turning left. So I'm like, okay, they're probably going to the restaurant. So I turn around and see, shit, this lift is coming towards me. And I'm trying to stop, but it's really slippery, so I fall and drive full speed into this fence. And when I wake up, my poles were gone, my skis were gone. I was covered with these blankets. One of my friends was next to me crying, "My best friend has died." And this instructor was running around, he said, "Fuck, it happened, it happened, it happened." So to cut a long story short, they picked me up with a helicopter, we flew to a hospital, I had broken my leg, I had surgery, and I couldn't play soccer anymore. At least not for the next half a year, I guess. I got really bored. I was at home, was bored, I annoyed my parents, they hated me for that. But then Easter, there must have been 3 months later, we flew to Argentina, to where my parents were born and raised, and where my grandfather still lived. And in the north of Argentina, he had a vacation house where we would always go. And even there I was bored, because my smaller brother, he would go hiking, and my other brother, my older brother, he would go horse riding with friends, and I couldn't do a lot. Until I found out that my parents would get up early in the morning and would play golf. So I thought, why not try this out? So I went with him, and I tried to play a little bit of golf, and I actually quite liked it. It's really fun, because it's a very technical sport, and you realize when you do what the instructor says, you actually get better. And I did enjoy it. What I was missing were my friends. It was a very lonely sport, I found. So we flew back to Germany, and I had to spend more time being bored at home, not being able to play soccer. And then we went to Argentina again that same year, because my grandfather, he turned 80. And we had a big party. And I remember on the way back, I was sitting in the plane, and on my right there was Andrew, my older brother. On my left there was Thomas. And we were fighting as always. And my parents would sit in behind us, and they got annoyed because we were so loud, and we were super embarrassed. So my mom gets up and starts yelling at us, but then she stops and plays around with my head and does stupid stuff, and hit her hands and tell her to piss off. And I hear her sit down and talk to my dad, and she's sad, and I remember that as if it was yesterday. She says, "Está perdiendo sus pelos." He's losing his hair. And I turn around, I'm like, no, not me, so whatever. I totally ignored what she said. Until 3 days later, I was having a shower in the morning before school, and when I was done, and when I was about to go out of the shower, I looked down and I saw how the drain was clogged. It was full of my hair. And I remember how my heart started beating, and I got really nervous. And I didn't really know what happened or what to do, and so I felt super ashamed. I took the hair, threw it away, made sure nobody would find it, and went to my room and thought, okay, this is just a joke, this is just a bad dream. I got dressed, and when I started making my bed, I would see all this hair on my pillow. And my heart started beating again, and I got super nervous, and I didn't really know what to do, so I grabbed my hair and went with my hand through my hair and saw that I had all this hair between my fingers. And I got this feeling when you can't breathe. So I was super scared. I didn't know what was going on. So I ran down the stairs and called my mom and told her, "Mom, I think I'm losing hair." And she said, "Nicky, it's not a problem. I know that. And I've made an appointment with the doctor. You're going to see him tomorrow." So we go to this doctor, and the doctor was super excited. He said, "Nicky, don't worry, this is alopecia, this is very common, and it's going to be great. It's just that your immune system is so strong, it's fighting the roots of your hairs. So what you have to do, you get the spray, you put it on your head every day, and you get these pills, cortisone, it will suppress your immune system, it'll be all fine, it'll be great." And I thought, this is cool, the doctor is positive, he's super excited, it's going to be great, so nothing to worry about. Until a week later, I went to school, and I overheard people talking about the fact that I had spots on my head without any hair. And that became more and more and more, and I realized so many people were talking about it, and I got super anxious. And every time people were standing or sitting behind me in class, they would talk about the fact that I wasn't having my hair. And I got really, really, really ashamed of the fact that people were talking about me. And I started feeling really naked, so every time I could, I would make sure that nobody would be standing behind me. and I was trying to avoid other people. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I felt more and more naked. I hated hanging out with my friends. I hated the fact to be exposed. So this one day I go to the room of my brother's room, and I find this baseball hat in his room. And I try it on, and immediately I felt so much stronger. I felt like, now I'm not naked anymore, I feel much better. So I just, for fun, started wearing a baseball hat, which back then people wouldn't do. In Germany, nobody would wear a baseball hat. Back then, for sure not. And for sure not in a closed room, and for sure not in front of more senior people. That was considered worst manners ever. But I really liked it. I felt protected. I felt like, here's my strength back. So this one day I go to school and I'm like, I actually don't want to take off this hat, which I had to do. So I walk up to the teacher, and before I got the chance to talk to him, this is getting romantic. Thanks for the special effects. So I walk up to the teacher, and before I could say something, he would grab my head, and I would step back and say, no, please. This is what I want to talk with you about. And I felt so ashamed to tell him, I'm losing my hair, and if you don't mind, I would love to wear the hat in class. And he was really cool with it. He said, I think I get it, don't worry, just sit down. And I felt much stronger. I felt, okay, maybe nobody would find out. Maybe people will not notice. But then I went and left the classroom. All my friends would go outside and spend the time together during the breaks, but I didn't want to spend time with them. I felt uncomfortable. So I stayed inside the building. And when I walked down the hallway, the principal of the school would pass. And before I could say anything, he would take off the hat, and I would feel so scared. And he looks at me and said, oh my God, are you sick? What's wrong with you? Do your parents know? And then he puts it back on, and I'm like, come on, that almost broke my nose. And then I'm like, no, this is, and I felt so ashamed again. I hated that. I hated when people would talk about it. And I explained to him, no, I'm losing my hair, and so it's actually all fine, but I just feel more comfortable with the hat. But it would only get worse. The week later, I went back to school, and that same teacher who said it's not going to be a problem, he put me aside and said, can I talk to you? And he said, so how's this hair thing going? And by the way, how's chemotherapy going? And I'm like, whoa. I understood what it was. My parents are doctors, but I've never even thought about being considered sick. I just felt naked, but I never thought people would think I'm sick. So I went home every day from class and felt terrible. And the problem with the drugs that we're taking, they made it even worse. Cortisone, if somebody has taken before, has these crazy side effects. But I would wake up at night, my heart would be beating like crazy, and I would be short of breath, and I was shaking, my hands were shaking, and I got super nervous. And my sight got really bad, which is crazy if you think about it. And I had these crazy mood swings. I would sometimes get up in the morning and be super energetic for no reason. And it was almost like I was looking at myself and knowing that I'm actually sad in a bad mood, but my body had all these energies. And then sometimes it would be the other way around. I got up in the morning. This one time I walked down and had breakfast with my brothers, and I was grabbing for the cereals, and he said, I just finished it. And I would start crying for no reason. And that was shocking. My brothers had never seen me crying, at least not for, I don't know, 5 years back then. And it was so shocking to them that my mom came out of the kitchen and asked me, what's wrong? She thought something must have happened. And I got up and I was pissed off. I told her, I don't want to do this anymore, leave me alone, I hate you all, just leave me alone. And luckily my dad, he came out of his room and looked at me and understood what was going on. He put me aside and said, Nicky, calm down, it's going to be all right. I told him, no, this, and I knew it was going to be, it's because of the drugs. So I told him, I don't want to take these shitty drugs anymore, it's not going to help anyway. And he said, okay, we'll take you off of them. The only problem is you can't do it overnight, you have to do it slowly. So I guess 6 to 8 weeks later, I could finally stop taking them. And I want to show you a picture or two. So this is me. That was 2 years after I decided I don't need training wheels, and I guess half a year before I went to school in ski boots. And this is really interesting because on the left, this is me when I had just broken my leg when we flew to Argentina. And that picture was half a year later. And the other side effect that cortisone has is that your cheeks or your entire body would be swollen all the time. The cells absorb more water, and then you've got all the water in between your tissue. So my parents' friends would come over and ask me, when did you have your wisdom teeth removed? And I wouldn't understand what they were talking about, because I was 11. So my parents said, there's one more thing you can try out. And I remember I was sitting in the car with my mom, and we were driving to this place which I didn't know, and she told me, so Nicky, we've done some research, and it's actually pretty common that people who are a little bit sad or a little bit angry with something, or just in a bad mood, lose their hair. It could be something psychological. And that's why we'll try out something new, and we'll just bring you to a psychologist, and you get a chance to chat with her. Let's see how that goes. And I remember how we got there. My mom left, and this lady, she was super friendly. I was very skeptical in the beginning, but then she gave me candy. And then she said, just sit down, and why don't you paint a picture? So I'm like, this is easy, candy picture. I started painting this house. And then I painted a fence and a garden, and I painted a horse and a cow and dogs. And I got nervous because I didn't know what I was supposed to do, and look at her, and she says, there's so much room, why don't you paint something else? So I added a train, something that came to my mind. And then she said, so this is really interesting. Now think about your family. Where do you see your family in this sheet of paper that you just painted? And I look at her, I'm like, so this horse is my dad. The cow is my mom. The dogs are my brothers. And so the only thing left was the train. I said, the train is me. And she said, well, this is very interesting. Because, your family is on one side and they're connected. And you're driving away in the train. And then I interrupted and told her, so I know why I'm here. And I don't think that painting pictures helps me to grow hair again. Anyway, this is bullshit, because I could have, my dad could have been the train and I could have been the dog. But thanks for the candy. So my mom came back and she was excited to hear how it went, and I talked to her and told her, this was fun. The gummy bears are great, but this is pointless. My hair's not going to grow because of that. And that's basically the time when I decided, when I had to accept this is not going to change anytime soon. And that's the time when I started wearing my hat all the time. That was Christmas. These are my cousins, and this is my brother. Christmas I would wear my hat. At home. Or even when I went water skiing, I would not take off this hat. Never. I would take it out, put it up in the morning, and I would take it off in the afternoon or at night when I got home. And that's where it changed a lot as a character. I felt super uncomfortable. I wouldn't run any risks. I didn't try out random stuff anymore. But I played a lot of golf. So I would get up in the morning, put on my hat. I would go to school, come home, have lunch. I would go to the golf club and play golf all afternoon. And I love golf for three main reasons. First of all, it is a very challenging and demanding sport, and you get better if you practice enough. But I also could be alone on my own, and I didn't have to justify. I didn't have to talk to people and explain them why I lost my hair and the fact that I didn't have any. So when I was 15, we moved to Hamburg, and I hated the idea of moving from Munich to Hamburg because I knew I would have to reintroduce myself to friends. And I would have to go to teachers again and tell them that I'm losing my hair or had lost my hair, and that I would prefer wearing the hats. But when I got there, I pretty quickly realized that it's become really easy for me because it's this pitch. I could do it very emotionless, and everybody would work fine. It's just, yeah, I don't have any hair, okay, cool, cap, yeah, fine. And anyway, I would spend most of the time on the golf course. And I was really lucky because I joined the golf club with the most successful team in Germany. And the golf club and the golf course became a safe haven. I felt very comfortable because people wouldn't ask me about my hair. They were actually really excited about the way I would play golf. They loved that I hit the ball so far and that was so good and that I supported the team. And I would never ever have to talk about my hair. And I remember how we started playing internationally and would travel all around Europe. And this one day I was sharing the room with a really good friend of mine, Nicky. And I had a shower, and I would get out of the shower, and he looks at me and starts laughing. And I turn around and say, "What's up?" And he said, "Do you know that you have this tan spot at the back of your hat?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have eyes." But no, he said, "It's really funny because we spent so much time in the sun, you're really tan up until here, and you've got the spot here." So I had the spot in the back of my hat. Yeah, this is funny. And then he looks at me and said, "You know what? If your hat was all tanned, you'd look really cool." And I laughed. I said, "Yeah, this is fun." And then the next morning we would hit some balls, and when we went on the course, he said, "No, you should take off the hat today. What's the point? You're in the golf course, but you're surrounded by your best friends. Just take it off, and your hat will get some tan, and you look so much better." Thank you. And I did it. I took off the hat and then played a round of golf without a hat. And that evening I had the worst sunburn in my life. I was 18, and that was the first time after 7 years my hat had seen the sunlight. But I would keep playing golf without a hat. I just kept doing it, and I started to feel really comfortable with it. I also won some golf tournaments with help. And my girlfriend also told me, "You look pretty good with a tan hat now." But I started to feel really comfortable. 2 years after I returned from Argentina, 2 years after I started losing my hat, my grandfather would visit us in Germany. I was really nervous to see him again because I knew he had never seen me without any hat. So I was 13 and my grandfather would come, and I remember I was standing in front of him, and he said, "Why don't you take off the hat and say hello to your grandfather?" And I said, "Yeah, because I don't want to." I said, and I had to do this pitch again. I lost my hair and I feel really uncomfortable. And he said, "Why don't you just take it off? We're family, right?" So I took it off, felt ashamed as always. And then he said something that resonated with me until today. He actually thought out loud because later he regretted it, but he said, "This is so good, it'll be so easy to differentiate yourself from other people." And then he regretted it, but it didn't hurt me. It made me think a lot. Because that was the first time ever that I thought about not having any hair could actually have positives. And it's really funny because today I hate hair. I hate the fact that I could potentially grow hair. I hate the fact that I hate the idea of having hair anywhere. It's really funny because we joke about this a lot at home. And my friends laugh about me, how I hate hair. But they also say really flattering things. Luke, for example, he keeps telling me if you had to sleep with a guy, it would be me. One said that too once, I think. So I started feeling much more comfortable with that. And I started surrounding myself with my friends again. And I invited them over all the time. And they loved it. If you ask my friends today, what would you do after playing golf, they would tell you, we always went to Nicky's place. We always had these barbecues, and we always drank a lot. And it's funny, because I bet if you asked the third person who was watching us, that it didn't really look like I had a good time. Because all my friends were having fun, and I took care of the barbecue and the kitchen and whatever. But I really liked making sure that my friends are comfortable, because that's what they had done to me. And it's really funny because the first day we got here, even before we had slept the night at Schwab, Juan and Fernando and I thought, why don't we throw a barbecue for all the other friends, future friends. And so we did, and it was so great to see how everybody could have a good time, and I felt so good to make sure that everybody actually did have a good time. And then, as Juan said before, we thought about traveling to South America over winter break. And first I wasn't pushing it that much. But later on, I told all the 11 people who went, why don't we spend New Year's in Uruguay at my father's house? And it's been a really easy pitch because Uruguay is pretty awesome. But we actually ended up there and we had such a great time. And I remember there was New Year's Eve, how everybody was partying and drinking and making out. And if you only knew. So I'm sitting here with my dad and I watch all these people having, why are you so red, Mooks? So I'm sitting here with my dad and all these people are having so much fun. And I turn around and tell him, this is so cool, they're having such a great time. And this is so, it just means so much to me. It's so cool to make sure that other people feel comfortable because that's what my people back then did to me. And the only thing is, I still have a problem connecting to people like very quickly. Unless I start being funny, unless I make jokes. And it's really funny because the other day I stumbled across a paper, a scientific paper about humor that says the comedic experience is about demonstrating the manifold nature of how things can go wrong by violating expectation. And I guess that's a little bit what Juan and Georgia was referring to. Sometimes I don't have a sometimes I just say things which are a little bit out there. And sometimes I send my social security number to all my classmates. But it's all about pushing the comfort zone. It's all about making sure that there's some humor in the room and people laugh a little bit. And there's the only thing I want to make sure is that I know I'm stretching boundaries a little bit, and I do work on pretty thin ice sometimes. But what I want you guys to it really comes with good intentions, and sometimes I take it too far, and I apologize for that. Maybe not. Whatever. But it comes from a very good place. The good news is I'm not going to become president, and that's fine. The bad news is that you'll have to deal with me in the way I am. And sometimes I do put Facebook's picture like this. Thank you very It's a good one.
Is there anything today that makes you feel naked, embarrassed?
So I still don't like when people stand behind me. And until recently, I would always wear. It's just something that I thought about before giving the talk. I would always wear a shirt with a collar. You would never see me in t-shirts. And that's getting better. Other than that, what I feel most uncomfortable, what I'm most afraid of, is that people misunderstand me. That I'm making a joke and people feel really uncomfortable and don't know where I'm coming from. Or that whatever I do, being a little bit, if I just take it too far a little bit. And finding that things lying down is not good. It's not always been easy, but everything else is alright. I mean, yeah. Look at this. That was easy. Amr.
Looking forward, like 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, what do you want to sitting down, and what do you want to see that you have achieved in your life, and what do you want to see yourself?
So let's phrase it differently. Ask me who I want to be and what I want to do for others. What I want to do, so when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, without any hair, I was always looking for someone who would grab my hand and pull me out of where I was. And my parents would always tell me, it's going to be a ride, it's going to be great, at some point you'll feel comfortable without any hair. But that didn't help at all. It actually made me more frustrated. What helped me were people taking advantage of the right moment and pushing me out of my comfort zone. And I feel that for people in a very similar situation, it's a little bit hard to imagine that I actually felt terrible, but I did. For people who feel terrible, for whom I could do something like that, give them the right push at the right time, that's something that I'm looking for, and that's something I wish I could do for someone else.
So I'm curious, you talked about your process of becoming more and more comfortable with not having hair, and then you talked about how here now you're like, I hate hair. It seems like you're totally comfortable with it. When do you think that switch happened, and especially how did it feel when you got to the GSB? By then were you totally comfortable?
So that was, yeah, when I got here it was already totally over it. I can't tell you the right moment because it took, so from the moment when I started playing golf without any hat to feeling super comfortable, that probably took 5 or 6 years. And I remember, I was just thinking, I remember how I started my first job after college, and I felt like people might ask what's going on or might not. But I also remember when I got here, I didn't even think about it and didn't even notice that I didn't have any hair. So it must have been the last 3 or 4 years. I guess so.
Last question.
Mine.
Thanks for sharing, Nicky. Can you talk about the role golf has in your life today, and kind of, I know you don't play much here, and kind of the reason for that, and what you see in the future?
So after high school, we have compulsory military service in Germany, or we used to, and so one step back, I took advantage of the fact that I was playing golf as much as possible. In Germany, you can only get the driver's license when you're 18, and I convinced these people that I really needed it to become a professional golf player, so I got with 17. and then there's this sports academy at the military where they would let the Olympic athletes practice sport as much as they wanted to. So I got into that too, even though golf isn't even Olympic. And I played golf on the national team, I guess, for 3 years. But then I consciously decided this is not what I really want to do. It's very frustrating to always compete against your best friends, and I didn't like that as much. And a very good friend of mine, Martin Kema, he decided to do something else, and he became a professional golf player. And he's among the top. I mean, I think he was #1 golf player 2 years ago. I'm not sure. I personally don't think I could ever get there, or could have ever got there. I just started enjoying playing in the team with my friends, and we still do that. So if I really wanted to and put effort into it, there's a chance that I would go back to Germany and play the German Championship with my team. But at some point you have to prioritize what you really want from your life. And I would feel, so the problem right now is if I play golf, I don't enjoy it that much. First of all, I'm frustrated with myself because it just doesn't look as it looked a couple of years back, and that's super frustrating. And then I'm used to playing golf competitively. It's not, I can't go in my buggy and have a couple of beers and just beat some balls. It's just not enjoyable for me. That's why I don't play a lot here. Thanks for asking.